Hey guys, welcome to the Homestead. So today I thought I'd come in and just do a video and just talk about everything that's going on right now, give you some updates on the Homestead, what's happening around here, and I mean there's just lots to talk about. Right now, I know everyone is paying attention to the news. Everyone's talking about this virus going around. What are we going to do about it? You know, how to best plan and move forward with our lives. I think most of the country is under some sort of forced quarantine right now, and it's kind of up in the air of what's going to happen next or where this is going to go from a government level. And so we don't know any of that. We're just kind of all sitting by and waiting to see. Here on the Homestead, I've gone through and tried to evaluate so many of the things that we have here. Do I have enough of this? Do I have enough of that? You know, probably like many of you are, you're trying to figure out how, okay, can I quarantine myself? What's that going to look like? Do I have everything I need? What do I need? We've been preparing for this for years. I mean, it's one of the main reasons we moved out of the city back in 2012 is because we thought, you know, me and my wife, we thought, and, you know, our in-laws too, Tim and Joanne, we thought that this was only inevitable because of the economy, the way the economy works, fractional reserve lending, and I don't have time to get into all that, but it's mathematically unsustainable. So what do? You know, we want to prepare ourselves as best we can, prepare our families, and the best way to do that is eventually end up on a homestead where we can be more self-sustaining, grow our own food, have some livestock, and just, you know, prepare and be further away from these major metropolitan areas. And it's so funny, so many people during the course of that journey have made fun of us, called us doomsdayers. The whole Doomsday Prepper show that came out years ago was just basically to poke fun at people like us. And me and my wife, you know, we were college educated and we were smart people, you know, did very well in corporate America. And, you know, we're not stupid, but we can see mathematics. I can see that fractional reserve lending is going to eventually lead to the collapse of the economy, just like it has throughout history and other economies. So it's just never good to print out paper that's not backed by anything. And right now, I think just this last week, they've basically dumped another $1.5 trillion, or planning on dumping another $1.5 trillion of funding money on the economy. And all that does is lessen the buying power of the current dollar that's out there. And so this is not sustainable. We knew this was coming. We planned all of this, and now she's gone. So it's like, what am I going to do? I really had envisioned tackling this problem one day with her. Anyway, so I'm going through and I'm trying to reevaluate everything and trying to figure out what's next. We have a milk cow. And so when we originally got this milk cow a couple years ago, we had the idea that this was going to be a milk cow that for our family, and we were going to be able to milk it. However, you know, we have a number of neighbors and people and contacts in town that produce raw milk, their own raw milk, and they sell the raw milk. They make yogurt and they make cheeses or whatever, things like that. We have a neighbor just down the road who sells us basically as much milk as we can take, and because she has a number of large milk cows, full-size milk cows, and she sells her milk to people in the area or trades for certain things. And so we have as much milk as we can get, and so I don't really need this milk cow anymore, and so I'm actually going to sell it. In fact, I have a possible buyer coming out tonight to look at her, and so I don't know what's going to happen with all that. I just know that I can't take on that responsibility. That was something that was more me and Jamie's thing that we were going to do together. She was going to do a lot of the milking for that and take on some of the responsibility for that. And right now I'm trying to juggle homeschool. I'm trying to juggle running a business. Because I do online work and all of that, including try to make videos for you, as well as the regular chores of keeping up with the kitchen and, you know, meals and all that stuff. I just don't have time for a milk cow right now. So I think we're going to go ahead and sell that milk cow. It's in milk. It just had a baby bull calf, and the pair will go together. And so hopefully we'll have a buyer for that soon. That's something I don't have to juggle anymore because I still have to go out and milk her twice a day, you know, to keep the milk flowing. And so that's just, you know, a job that I have to do every day. So what about milk? Like, let's just say, for instance, I can't buy cheese or butter anymore because one of the things that we had looked at years ago, me and Jamie, was, you know, how do we get fat in our diet? And a lot of times what people would do is that they would render pork fat down into lard, and that's how they would get fat in their diet. But you probably know we don't eat pork here on the homestead. Why? You can go research that on your own. But I think the Bible is very clear about things you should eat and things you should not eat. And to be perfectly honest with you, some of you out there who think I'm crazy on that line of thinking, this whole virus thing was caused by someone eating something in China. I think it was a bat. Something that the Bible says not to eat because the bats carry the coronavirus. So, maybe there is something to this whole thing. Maybe God's not a schizophrenic and says you should eat one thing one day and then, well, now in this chapter you can't eat it. Well, in this chapter you can eat it again. Maybe God's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Okay, I'm getting off on a whole tangent. But that's why you tune in, right? So anyway, my notes, I'm going through my notes, and we're going to stay on topic. It's all, milk. How am I going to get fat into our diet? Because I'm not going to eat what I believe the Bible says not to eat. Milk, it's milk fat, it's butter. You can make butter. You can make butter, and that's fat that you can make, you can use for getting into your diet. Right now we have lots of cooking oil I have stored up. I have some cooking oil that I have set aside, but also, you can make butter. And so starting next week, I have butter that I still have from the store, but by next week, it's going to be running out. So I'm going to start making butter again. I'll start making butter. I have the Ninja processor. I can always make butter with that. It makes it really super simple, really super easy. And so I'll make butter with that, and I'll have butter fat that we can use for our family, for cooking, for different reasons. I mean, I can usually make about a pound of butter each time with the 2 gallons that I get, along with a really good 1 pound and a 1/3 pound of mozzarella cheese for that 2 gallons as well. So I can do all that with the milk that I get from my neighbor. So thinking about all that stuff, I'm thinking, okay, what about when, you can't go to the store anymore? You can't buy milk, you can't buy cheese, you can't buy butter. How are you going to make that on your own? Do you have a source? Even when we were living in St. Louis, we had a source where we could go and we could buy milk, raw milk, and then be able to use that for whatever we wanted. And so we'd buy, 3 gallons at a time, I think, back in St. Louis. We're buying usually about 2 gallons. I'm buying about 2 gallons at a time for my family here. Chickens, we have lots of eggs that are coming in on a pretty regular basis right now. Our chickens are laying like crazy, and so we're getting, I think, almost a dozen a day. And so we're eating a lot of eggs. We have a lot of eggs here on the homestead. We're pickling eggs. I have lots of pickled eggs on the shelf now, probably a couple gallons of pickled eggs that we can use for a protein source down the road. So we're always putting up food, using our current food storage that we put up last year, still using all that. But eggs right now, eggs are plentiful. And so we can always use that as barter, or we can use that as a food source. So that includes the update for the cow. We're selling the milk cow, Truffles is her name, and her new bull calf. I think I forgot what they named it online. There's a bunch of you guys out there that named the bull calf, and I don't remember what you named it. Beefcake. You guys named it Beefcake because Truffles is, milk product, and Hereford is a beef cow because that's what she was mated with. So Beefcake. Okay, I get it. But some of you guys came up with that name, so that was kind of funny. But going ahead, switching over to the homeschool. Right now, what we're going through in homeschool right now, we're trying to do read-alongs every morning before we get started into math and science and language arts, things like that. We're doing those every day. Also, Joshua's doing a typing program every day, and I think he's up to about 30 words a minute with about 100% accuracy, or very close to 100% accuracy. So that's really good. He's 13 years old and he's already typing at a 30 words a minute with a pretty close 100% accuracy right now. So excited to see that. But right now in our morning time, we are doing reading, and this is like a Charlotte Mason type philosophy, morning time reading. And sometimes we do it in the evening too. Like lately, I've been getting up kind of late. I've been sleeping late because I've been staying up late working on website stuff. And so I'm having to do my reading at night. But here's what we're reading right now. I really like this one called Stories of the Nations. It's a Charlotte Mason book. And we did the Stories of America, I believe. I forget what it's called, but it was basically just USA-based stories. And these are stories of different influential people throughout either the U.S. or the world. This one is the world. And so there's stories in here about William Shakespeare. And I think we just read about Galileo. And let's see, what else? Who else in here? talking about the Ottoman Empire, the fall of that. I'm sure Napoleon will be in here pretty soon. So we're just going through that. It's been a fantastic book to read to your kids, and even my oldest likes hearing me read to them. And so it's always been something that Jamie pushed, was open story reading for your kids, even if they're older. It doesn't matter. And through her research, she found that it's actually really important that that fathers read to their kids as well. There's something about a mom when she reads to her kids, but there's something really special that happens when a dad reads to his kids. So this one here is Stories of the Nations. Great book so far. We've already gone through the first one here. Let me get it for you. Stories of America, Volume 1. So we've already gone through this. We're going through Stories of the Nations next. The other book we're reading right now in the morning time is this one. So I'll read a chapter out of that, and then I'll go to this one. And this was sent in by a friend of Jamie's. Her name is Sonia, and I believe it was an old school friend. And Joshua had already read Little Britches a while ago. It'd been a year or so since he had read Little Britches. But he wanted to hear it again, and so I'm reading it now in the morning. And Caleb is just loving this book. I mean, he likes this one's okay, but Caleb really likes this one. And it's Little Britches, and it really gives a kind of a history lesson on how the Old West was back in, I believe, in the 1800s. And it's late 1800s, I believe. And their economy was kind of going through some turmoil out there because of the gold rush and things like that were happening, and that were happening in Colorado where they were at. And so having just been to Colorado, it's kind of neat because we are familiar with some of the things that they're describing here, especially when the plain regions meet the mountains. And so it's a really interesting book, lots of good info in here, lots of history, lots of lessons to be learned in this book on how hard ranch life was, being a farmer out west was. It was definitely a struggle, and during their hard times of economic turmoil, they would basically barter and trade just to get by, whether it was goods and services or whatever they could barter and trade to get by if there was no money to be had. I'm going to come and I'm going to basically hay your field, and you're going to come and you're going to help me, twist beans or whatever you're going to do. But there's just different things like that happened all the time between the farmers and the ranchers, which gives a really good picture of community and how people would live and work together. And even sometimes if they didn't get along, they still work together in order to survive. Today, we don't even do that. We don't even talk to our neighbors in the cities today. You don't even know who your neighbors are in your suburbs. That you don't talk to them. You don't, when they come out of the house, you kind of, I don't want to, don't talk to your neighbors. Put the blinders on. That's the way it is in a lot of suburbs and city environments today. Whereas even out here today in rural America, I know my neighbors, we talk to our neighbors, and sometimes, maybe some don't get along all that well, but when it comes down to it, if somebody needs something, we're there. So really great book, and it kind of showcases all of those aspects. Little Britches, if you've never read it, highly recommend it for your kids, and especially you dads out there, moms, reading it to your kids. I think they would really love to get a kick out of it. Okay, so that's on the homeschool front. Let me go show you what we're doing with our wine today. So if you ever walk into our house, you notice that over in the corner here we have this carboy. It's a 6-gallon carboy, and it's full of this grape-looking juice stuff. And there is a whole bunch of scum on the top of that. I don't know if you can see that or not in there. I'll try to get a close-up so you can see it. But anyway, that scum is, it doesn't make it bad, it just looks nasty, but it's part of the yeast and part of the fermentation process that has taken place in here. Now, this is done fermenting. It's been here for almost 6 months, I believe. So, let's see, let me count this. October, November, December, January, February, March. So about 6 months. I believe it was October. May have been September. Maybe 7 months. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do the final process of this. So this has been completely done fermenting. It's gone through the winter time. It's been next to the stove, so it's experienced a number of increase and decrease in temperatures based on the winter because it gets cold at night, and then I come in and start the fire. It's right next to the fire. It warms up. It begins to bubble. But it's completely done now. Fermentation is over. And if you take this off, it smells amazing, delicious, absolutely amazing. Now, I didn't harvest any grapes last year. Normally, there's a 90-acre vineyard that's nearby, just maybe about 30 minutes away. I'll go there and I'll harvest grapes. Didn't do it last year because of the obvious reasons of taking care of Jamie and going through all of that. So Instead, what I did is I still wanted to make a batch of wine. You can go and just buy some Welch's grape juice at the store and put it in a carboy, pitch your yeast, and it will ferment just fine. And so I did that. I put in a bunch of Welch's grape juice. I think I added some grapefruit juice because grapefruit juice I think adds a nice kick, and some other ingredients and flavorings inside of here to just make this batch of wine. But what I want to do now is take it up a notch. I want to be able to add just something a little bit special so that it actually tastes very good, like store-bought actual good wine taste. And that's adding oak. You want to add white oak, charred white oak, to your carboy at some point before you harvest this. Now, normally I would have done this in the wintertime, but again, I was just dealing with so many things and emotions and all this stuff, so I was like, it totally went on the back burner. But I want to do this now because I want to keep it in there for a few months and just add that little bit of extra specialness to this wine. And so what I do is I have these pieces of white oak. This one here is already charred. Okay, I just charred this the other day. This one here has not been charred. It's just a stave of white oak, solid white oak. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a torch and I'm going to toast every single side of this piece of white oak, and then I will put it in like this one and with some others into this carboy. I'll take off the top and then just drop it in and let that sit for maybe another, I don't know, 6 months or so. And then after that, I will go ahead and take this all out, and I will bottle them up in bottles, and then they'll sit for about 2 years and age because the acidity in this thing is going to be a little bit high, I'm assuming. I haven't tasted it yet, but I'm assuming the acidity is going to be a little bit high. And so the way you tame that acidity is to let it sit in bottles over at least a couple of years. That's why real wine, you won't see on the shelf until it's at least 2 years old, usually. Now, today, the corporate wine companies have all kinds of tips and tricks, and all kinds is really what it is, a bunch of chemicals that they add to your wine in order to get it on the shelf sooner and have it taste exactly the same year after year after year, vintage after vintage after vintage. And really, you have to ask yourself, is it wine at that point? Yeah. It came from grapes. It was fermented, so basically, technically, it's wine. But where the character of the wine has been lost because they have added chemicals, and the corporate companies that own these vineyards now, most of them, all are the same every single year. And you know that old saying about wine that wine gets better with age, that has been thrown out the window. Or that year was a really good vintage, that's been thrown out the window. Because every vintage is exactly the same because they want consistency in order to be able to sell to their market year after year. I hope that makes sense. So for those of us out there who are still true blue winemakers and who want to make wine the way it was supposed to be made with not consistency and just letting nature take its course, you and I are on the same page with going ahead and trying out every year to make our wine, and then trying to do different things to give it character so that it'll be special year after year. And so that's what we're doing here. We're going to go ahead and toast these, put them in, and then we will be waiting for another 6 months before we bottle. Okay, so we have all these things charred and they're ready to go into the carboy. We're gonna put those in the carboy and they're gonna stay there for 6 months, and then at some point after about 6 months we'll take it out, we'll bottle it, and then it'll sit for 2 years before we actually drink it, and that allows the acidity level. And maybe it won't be 2 years. When I finally taste it, I'll decide then, you know, how that acidity is, and if it needs to rest for a year, maybe less. But I'm gonna go ahead and probably assume 2 years. We'll see. It may not be as much because usually when you harvest grapes, the skins of the grape are what add that acidity, and because this just came out of a bottle, the acidity might not be as high as the ones that I have actually harvested from a vineyard. because the grapes were processed by machine. And so there's no skins that were crushed during the processing of this wine here. So the acidity might be a little bit lower, so maybe it'll be ready to drink within a year or less. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just take off this top, and oh, it smells so good. Oh, it smells so good. So we'll just start dropping these in there, and they'll float for a while, and eventually they will take on the wine, and then they will sink. Is that all of them? Yeah, that's all of them. So there you go, and then I'm gonna replace this back on top. Oh, it smells so good. And just squeeze it in there. Okay. And what I have in here in this airlock is vodka, and that vodka keeps any air travel back and forth from any contaminants that may go into this wine and mess it up. So I always recommend use a proper airlock. Don't be one of those morons out there that use balloons and think it's gonna be okay. Get a proper airlock, get a proper carboy, and use vodka in your airlock instead of water, okay? A lot of people just use water. Use vodka because there will be bubbles and stuff and things that transfer back and forth here, and you do not want any air that comes back. Sometimes it does bubble backwards depending on temperatures. So if you don't have a perfectly temperature controlled environment and it does go backwards, if you're using water, there could be a contamination that happens. But if you use vodka, anything that passes through there will be disinfected. Hope that makes sense. Okay, ready to go. Now we are going to wait and see how that turns out. I have some other bottles that have been sitting for about a year. I'd like to at some point build a wine cellar on the homestead, but because of everything that's happened in the last year, just got put on the back burner. But at some point I want to try to build a wine cellar, root cellar out in the backyard, and then be able to store my wines for a certain amount of time before I enjoy them, you know. So we'll keep you posted on when that project happens. Other than that, well, I guess that's it. We'll give you some updates. I have some other stuff I want to do videos on coming up shortly, so stay tuned for those. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Be sure to like the video before you leave. I mean, that really helps. That really helps YouTube know that we're not a bunch of scumbags and that people actually do like us. And so hit that like button for me. I really appreciate it. And check out the sponsor at the end of the video. It's because of sponsors like that that allow us to make these videos for you. All right, guys. See you next time at the homestead. Bye. Hey, guys. I'm happy to introduce an American Homestead sponsor, Zervita Zeal. Now, first off, I only accept sponsors from products that I use and believe in. My family uses Zeal mainly because we want to ensure a healthy immune system. You see, it's made up of only whole food concentrates and includes no artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. The included sweetener is all natural from fruit and the stevia leaf. It's gluten-free, it's vegan, and it's kosher. In 2018, my youngest son was involved in a bike accident that resulted in the surgical removal of his spleen, and that's an important part of his immune system. And because we live on a farm, you can guess that having a healthy immune system for our family is very important. Some of the included ingredients are beetroot, chicory root, turmeric, moringa, blueberries, cranberry, goji berry, milk thistle, ginseng, alfalfa, broccoli, and so much more. It's these natural ingredients that can easily be made into a powerful and tasty drink that my family can make and feel good about. So sign up and give it a try today. Every purchase you make goes to help the homestead so that we can continue to make great homesteading videos for you. Link is in the description below. Go ahead, give it a try. Hey guys, did you know you can become a patron of An American Homestead? They get access to private videos, and we send them gifts from the homestead that we make here on the homestead. And we also enter our patrons into special giveaways that are only available to them. And before you go, please check out these other great videos. Go ahead, click. I'll wait.